To Make It Stackhouse. We were in town this last year in Florida, and we went to dinner with Bob and Carol, his wife, and I had an exhibition there. It was an architectonic exhibition, and Carol made the mean comment of, "So you can paint, so what?" And I'm like, oh, you know, these guys are my heroes, you know. She's like, "So you can paint, so what?" And so that really prompted me, along with the work of Jim Toya. This is a little earlier. We did some performance work, Donna and myself, and a performance artist. This is on the Rio Grande, just south of Albuquerque, where I decided to, okay, it's time to do a drawing. What happens if I just leave my paper in the river and let the river do the drawing? Did it go away? This is the kind of thing we end up with all the bug trails. This is giving the drawing over to the river and allowing the river to do its thing. And then once again, another kind of take on modernist landscape painting is taking the piece of paper, hanging it in the trees, letting nature do whatever it wants to it, and taking a photograph of that painting. A little cynical, but a little bit fun too at the same time. So, okay. Did I do it? 30 minutes? Great. Any questions about the Strange Attractor? I know that was a lot of images. You guys know it. Yes, sir?
What initially turned you on to seeking it out, seeing it in other people's works?
I think that seeing it in other people's works came later. But when it initially, without knowing what the term meant, I was living in Florida, and a buddy of mine says, you know, you need to go to graduate school. And so I went from Florida to New Mexico, and it was a strange attractor. It was very odd, and just the idea of getting up and moving to a different place. And I think that every time we reach a plateau in art, Susan and I were talking, Susan Zwirling, about how do you generalize this kind of term? And I think it's a human term in that every time we are doing the same thing, we get stuck in a rut. We wake up, we're doing the same thing day after day, and we want to grow. The idea of working in a job, it's not enough just to go to work and do the same thing day after day, but we have this need to advance, to grow, and to find something new. And I think that ultimately takes courage and takes some faith. So, yes?
Yeah, well, I just on your last point, I think that's also true for writers. I mean, presumably that's why we have so many successful writers who have been alcoholics or drug users. It's what kicks you out of a rut, or changes your perspective, or gives you a different idea. And I was telling you about a play I'd written before we came in here. I was terribly sick at the time, and I think that produced a different consciousness where I was able to dream a play, which I had not done before. But I think the broader point then is, what do we do in our own lives to kick us out of those ruts and those normal ways of doing things, so that we, this is probably when we escape from those ruts that we grow and develop in ways that are eventually, although scary, eventually very nourishing.
It is. And the idea of painting left-handed for me. And I'm a right-handed person, so I'll paint with my left hand because I have less cognitive control over what I'm doing, yet there's a bodily kind of, there's a body intelligence that is at play there. But one of the first things to do is to suspend judgment. In other words, if we're really bringing something fresh into the world, then we're really not at a place where we can put benchmarks on it and say, does this match up with anything that I've seen before? Because if it's nothing we've seen before, then there are no benchmarks to go along with it. So, what do we do to get out of it? Brush your teeth left-handed? I don't know. It's how do we change our daily rituals in order to kick ourselves out of it? Nancy, how did you do it?
Oh, why do you think I've done it?
Well, obviously,
what gross assumption are you making?
Well, the shift to photography. Have you always been making photography? Have you?
No. Actually, I just find sort of like brain mutation things. Like I was working on some plexiglass and silver and walked away from it and all of a sudden got a flash of, man, that would look really good in clear quartz and lapis. And I was over then thinking about stone cutting.
So it's just an insight.
So mine was an insight.
Right.
Or things that just sort of, I just get flashes. And it
Yeah.
moves me into a different thing, often where I don't particularly want to go. And it takes several weeks to adjust to that.
When we end up somewhere where we don't have plans, we don't have a map.
Yeah, but I don't you know, delete it because it's there. But I just sort of have to sometimes adjust to what it is.
Yeah.
But I think anything that stimulates the brain, travel, trips, like you say, brushing your teeth with your left hand, new foods, any new experience could shift you into, you know, that kind of shift.
And there's some comfort in old experience too. There's
Sure.
safety in doing the same thing over and over. And but I promise, Phil, I won't become a writer anytime soon.
I'm not playing pain.
Yeah, Carlos Castaneda wrote extensively about his trips into Mexico to find his spiritual teacher, and it was a drug-induced several volumes, and I think we rely on that kind of kick, and it's a popular thing, and I almost put those books down because I was kind of sick of that, and Carlos, if it's even true, asked his teacher, he says, you know, you're giving me all these things. He said, but you're not taking any of them. And his teacher responded, that's because you're so conditioned. You need an extra kick to get you out of your conditioning into seeing the world in a new way.